I want to welcome our afternoon podcasters to the Fractional Executive Podcast. We are the bridge between, as you grow, be able to attract top talent to help you get to the next level. And the Fractional Executive, we're going to call you the extraordinaire. I don't like the word expert, so we're going to call you the extraordinaire. So, for those that don't know you, Jonathan, just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Name's Jonathan Tremblay. I'm the owner and founder of Pivotal Exec Solutions. Like Pete said, I'm your fractional executive extraordinaire guru, and what I specialize in is coming into companies and helping out different folks figure out where their gaps in knowledge are, so that we can get them matched up with the appropriate executive to help them resolve a lot of the issues around the consequences of not knowing, right? Whatever
Mhm.
you don't
Yes.
know is gonna come to bite you in the butt eventually, so we help you prevent that.
And those are avoidable things. If people just look a little bit ahead and know where they're going and the talent that they need to get there. I won't mention names because I don't have permission to do it, but a friend of mine, she's been in marketing. We've known each other for 20 years. And we did a program together way back when, uh, Evernote. We were teaching people about Evernote.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was a gap back then between the young and the old because obviously technology has that gap. But she hired a fractional salesperson, and he was with them for a year and a half before they ended up, he helped them. They ended up hiring a full-time person. So, if they don't make those changes or make that bridge, that business is not going to go like that because it's all talent. And if you can attract the best possible talent, and there's times when you can't afford a CFO, a CTO, uh, a CIO. What's C? The
Yeah.
technology. I
CTO.
mean,
Yeah.
CTO and and then the fractional salesperson. They're all needed in the growth of a company. So when you're looking at companies and you're defining those problems, tell our viewers like how that develops patterns that you're able to kind of take and put in place with other companies. I always thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no, I think, like you mentioned, right? For me, it's all about pattern recognition, right? I joke around, I redid my office here a little while ago, and I've got an assortment and collection of Rubik's Cubes, in different shapes, different sizes, and different things. And inherently, patterns are what I get excited about, right? Whenever I see, oftentimes when I sit down with folks, a lot of people think like, well, have you ever worked with my industry specifically? And I'm like, the reality is all businesses follow a particular pattern, right? There's customer acquisitions, operations, and then payment or collections, right? Things of that nature. And of course, don't get me wrong, right? Like that's maybe an oversimplification. And as you get into the weeds of it, there are unique components to it. But the reality is it's the same pattern, just with a different labeling, right? It's a different fascia, if you will, right? And so, from that particular perspective, what I look for is where exactly are people. You hear a lot of the same words from people, right? Like, oh well, I'm just struggling to generate the revenue. I'm struggling to have enough time I'm working in my business 24/7 and my business is a mess, right? Or I'm struggling to get leads and struggling to generate revenue for my business, or whatever the case may be. You hear a lot of the same complaints, you hear a lot of the same words, and I'm like, okay, I can basically very quickly, through just a few conversations with a person, and really quickly identify, okay, you really need this person over here. You really need that person over there. This is what they specialize in. And even as I talk to, I've developed a team of different experts in different industry. As I'm bringing them in, I'm like, ooh, you could help my business over here. And I know exactly where to slot people to generate the
Mhm.
best results.
What do you think? I agree with you. It seems like the gap on technology is wide. Every business is trying to, including mine, is trying to adapt to the new resources that are out there. We don't know what we don't know. We've talked about that. Do you find once you solve a big tech problem that now it's like the water is flowing in the river? Now there's other areas that they can apply talent to, like the fractional salesperson, the fractional marketing person, and so forth. Do you see technology as being kind of the centerpiece of it, or is that just my observation?
No, I think that the reality is technology kind of becomes your plumbing for your business, right? And to
Mhm.
kind of identify, right, like when you're like a one man show, right? You're just trying to get leads, deliver on your services, and essentially, collect payment, whether you collect payment up front or at the end, whatever that may look like. But then as you kind of like, and even as a one man show, right, your technology will dictate how smoothly customers and clients and things of that nature flow through your business, right? And even as you get started, right, there's different components of like, well, how are you keeping track of your financials? QuickBooks, right? And how much of that information is like feeding manually, where you're manually entering everything, or through automation? Are you sending out invoices and actually collecting credit card payments, or things of that nature? And so what ends up happening is, as you're pursuing your business and you're continuing to grow, your technology will be involved in every piece of what you do. Now, to your point, what ends up happening is like any even like a factory, right, type based model. If you turn around and let's say your business essentially has 10 different machines, if you will, that are operating at any given time. If you've got a bottleneck in machine number 3, then what ends up happening is, once you resolve that, you now increase the flow in the rest of your machines, and you will identify a different bottleneck. Sometimes that bottleneck ends up happening beforehand. You're now like, okay, well, I fixed number 3, and everything after that is actually pretty smooth. But number 2 is now not feeding enough to actually feed the entire system. Every time that you fix a bottleneck, you will be able to see the impact on the rest of your system. And what ends up happening is you're just jumping from system to system. And technology is a part of what will help you optimize a lot of these different things. But sometimes a big part of it is getting connected to the right person, right? Your CMO will be able to help you in the bottleneck of your lead flow, your ability to present yourself. Then you've got your sales, your chief sales officer, your CSOs, who are going to be able to actually help you in the bottleneck of, I'm getting leads, but I'm just not closing them, right? And so forth and so on. And as you get into different levels of your business, you'll require different team members and different folks at different levels, but technology will be a part of every step. It just depends on how soon you choose to utilize it and how much you choose to invest.
And I think, and this is just an observer from on the outside, and I've always been interested in technology, but it wasn't my gig. I could see it changing. I read The Great Boom Ahead, and Paul Pilsner talks about the new, the way the economy is shifting because of technology. I know this is a little bit of a loaded question, but I want our viewers to kind of frame it. Do you feel, because things are changing so fast, if I looked at fractional, let's just say there's 5 of them out there,
Sure.
different fractional, what would you say is the most important for a business to nail and be on top of as we move into this age of AI and all this new technology?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I would definitely say it's kind of a double-edged sword on this question, right? Number one is I would definitely say that without the ability to generate sales, right? Whether that's the acquisition of a customer or however that process goes, you have no
Mm-hmm.
business, right? And even historically, I'm a huge operations guy, right? Which I think kind of like goes in a quick second, right? Because if you sell something, but you can't actually deliver on it and deliver on it consistently, then you have no product, right? And those are the kind of the two biggest ones that I kind of always feel are competing for attention, right? And so much
Mm-hmm.
so that when people start a business, people will go either one of two routes, right? They will either do what are called lead based businesses, right? Where, you see people who will put out an ad or, start getting sales for a product that doesn't even exist yet, right? And you see that a lot, right? With like fundraising sites, and you see that a lot with startups who put on like, pre-sales or something to that effect, right? And then they try to figure out the operations second, right? And then you've got other people, and historically I've been more on the latter side of things, where I set up the business, I figure out how to set up the service, and then I figure out how to sell it, right? And that's where it's because I genuinely think like in order to have a business, you have to have both of those two things. You have to have the ability to sell and have the ability to operate. If you can't operate, you can't do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, which one's more important? It's questionable because sales is
Right.
the first step, and without sales, you can't do anything. Now, on the flip side of that, I'm also like operations falls into sales in a way, right? Without the
Mm-hmm.
operations to run the sales, you're always going to be trying to chase and get that particular business, but you kind of have like a chicken before the egg type situation too, right? But that's really kind of where it lands in. And I will say that once you have at least something in both areas, in my personal opinion, then it comes down to operations because your operations will dictate your sales as well, right? There's an operational component to running sales as well. But it's an interesting question, on philosophically where do you approach things. But me
Yeah.
personally, I've always been more on the operations side. But if
Yeah.
you get so bogged down in operations that you're not focusing on getting sales, it won't really matter. You could have the best company and product out there in the world, but
Yeah.
if no one knows to buy it, no one knows to go find it, you get into this situation that you're just the best kept secret, in the world. And I find that as much as I'm an operations guy, I have had to have a lot of partnerships and relationships with people who specialize in the marketing, networking, sales of my business because operationally there's no other business out there like mine, but I have a hard time with the sales component of things.
Yeah. They are kind of from a different, if you'd say like a different mother, they're individual. And I had a friend who built this elaborate lead generating machine, hours and hours and hours, never tested it. It's like you spend all this time building this, and you don't even know if the first person is going to spend any money. It's
Yeah.
like you build a big old website, you spend all this money, and now you're going like, okay, I don't know even how to generate any traffic to the website. It's
Yeah.
like if you don't have customers, you have nothing. I mean,
Yes.
they're the revenue. So, I want our viewers to kind of grasp that. Hold off on spending money before you figure out how to get them in the door with dollars, because that's the vote of confidence. If somebody's going to put their hard-earned money for your services, and they're going to put enough of you validated the business, as opposed to spending all this time on the back part of it. That's a good analogy. I think it's so important to prioritize in business and know what's most important, because if you don't, now it's moving at such a rapid speed, your competitors flying by you like you're standing still. What do you think? And you hear it all the time. And I know we brought it up in other podcasts, but I want our viewers, maybe they haven't tuned in. How are you using AI? What type of tool do you see it in your business and maybe a little bit into the future? You don't have to go too far because it's hard to
Yeah,
tell, you know.
no, 100%. Well, and I mean, the reality is the applications for AI are incredible, right? I mean, the reality is AI is definitely going to change the way we live on a day-to-day basis. We're already seeing AI being integrated to a lot of the different tools that we have. But I think that one of the things that I find that many people across the world, just even in their personal lives, but also within their business, are kind of missing the reality of it, is that AI can be almost like your own little personal assistant on small tasks, on small, especially around, I would definitely say one of two things. One is research, right? Research
Mhm.
like compatibility is just insane. And then task completion, if you will, and typically more around like transcription or any sort of writing based task. Very helpful to do through AI. So let me kind of break that down a little bit. So first off, like on the search on the research component, ever since AI has come out, we've all known that at least for the last like 10 to 20 years, Google has been on top of the world, right? Well, over the last couple of years, as AI has gained popularity, Google has actually started to significantly lose out on revenue because about the only thing that is more powerful than Google right now in researching anything is AI, right? And nowadays, there are so many different applications. I'm personally a huge fan of ChatGPT, but the reality is there's tons of other AIs that are coming out there. Gemini and Bing has their own, and all these different components. But the reality is, it doesn't matter which one you use. I personally like ChatGPT, but and I utilize ChatGPT to ask it all sorts of questions. And again, like people kind of like almost like sometimes feel like AI is going to come in and replace people. And I'm personally of the opinion AI will do the same thing that a wrench does, right? Yes, you can grab a bolt and try to spin it with your fingers, but at the end of the day, you're going to be struggling to get that bolt all the way in, and you're going to make your life very, very hard. If you use that wrench, though, it gives you leverage and it expands that same energy and the same strength you have in your arm. The wrench just simply makes you stronger at focusing that energy and helping you screw that bolt in, right? It's the same thing with like a hammer. You can try to sit here and nail the hammer with a rock, or you can actually use a hammer that is specifically, tailored for that particular action. ChatGPT does the exact same thing. It's the same thing as going to Google and Googling a bunch of stuff, but AI has just a more tailored approach, more streamlined approach. It can research a lot of different facets around what you're looking for and get you a very specific answer. The second part is obviously the ability to transcribe and create documents and things of that nature. I mean, AI, you can literally explain it. Hey, draft me an email to send to a client. Make sure the tonality matches my tonality. You can do so many different things around creating emails. I've created entire courses. I've literally gone on AI and been like, you know what? I'd love to understand how to trade stocks more effectively. If you were to create a course for trading stocks, how would you do that? And have AI literally create an entire stock trading course, write in writing, and then just ask it how to format it. Now, again, right, AI is only as powerful as you are on how you apply it, right? If I grab the wrench and I'm trying to nail something in with a wrench, I'm probably going to struggle, versus utilizing the right tool and knowing how to do it, right? It's the same thing with AI. AI is not just some magic box. It's going to need you to know exactly how to utilize it appropriately. And if you can do just, I mean, incredible things that used to take hours in mere minutes. So just to put that out there for users.
That's awesome. I want to give our viewers, I know that they have questions, and because you're hearing all this coming at us, and I think the number is we hear 60,000 marketing messages a day, which when you think of it, it's mind-boggling because we're being inundated with information. how do you apply that information for your business and what you can do? Give us a way that people can get a hold of you. And I was just looking at my call to experience buttons and I couldn't find this. So why don't you tell us, and I'll type it in as best I can with my one-handed typing. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I actually have it right here. I'll go ahead
Oh,
and
oh,
do this form of
dang.
going.
See, that is what you call on top of things because, he sees that I'm struggling with one-handed. He jumps in, puts that information in there. That's what you call a solution-based person that knows what our viewers want to see. Okay, that's good. So for the audio listeners, go to 404-374-9322 to get a hold of Jonathan. And we want to, as we close out, tell our viewers what would be the one thing you would want them to take home from our podcast today.
Um, I think again, right? The reality is there is so much knowledge out there concerning everything, and I feel like one of the biggest challenges today is we can sit here have a quick 20-minute conversation and we're literally only scratching the surface of what's possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so again, the biggest thing is if you're trying to figure out everything on your own all the time, you have no idea how many things are out there that are possible and feasible to be utilized for your business, for your own personal life. I mean, even what I discussed about AI, I apply that to my personal life. I mean, I use it to, figure out how to better parent my kids. I use it to figure out, recipes for cooking. I mean, the reality is the applications are widespread. But if you're not, if you're trying to get out there and learn all the content and everything, you'd be spending the rest of your life trying to learn everything. Or you can figure out and talk to the experts who know each area and make sure that you surround yourself appropriately. People who are successful, they do not become successful by doing everything on their own. They do it by surrounding themselves with the most incredible talent that is out there. And once you do that, you'll get all the answers given to you, right? So.
Yep. The old saying, success leaves clues. I remember Henry Ford, and they talked about he was on trial, and he just basically said, "I don't need to know all the answers. I just need to know who can give me the answers." And on his desk, he had the phones of all his department heads that he would just access right from his desk, and that was 100 years ago. So it hasn't changed. We've just gotten faster and more information. So we still need to exercise that principle. So I want to
Yep.
thank you, Jonathan, for sharing with our viewers the important lessons that have to go to really grow their business and go to the next level. As we say, level up, viewers. All right. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much.